Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We were supposed to go live, but tech was not trying to let us be great, so we decided to go ahead and do a recording because we felt that this conversation could be still super impactful for anyone that's watching this live or in the recording. So I just want to thank you so very much for being a guest today, Stacy.
Thank you. It's exciting to have great conversations with great people, and I absolutely love it, especially when we can share fabulous information that will lift others up. So, yeah.
Yes. And I always think it's impactful to have interviews to be able to use both parties' platforms to be able to educate people about some of the things that we're sometimes challenged with from day to day. So when we first connected in Her Texas, which is a networking group for female entrepreneurs in the state of Texas,
Yes.
I was like, hey, if you ever want to do a live, let's do one. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. So I just want to say thank you
Absolutely.
for being a yes because sometimes people are like, no, I don't do that.
Well, actually, I'm inspired by my daughter because she's um, a mission to say yes to as many opportunities as she can. I'm like, ooh, I can do that too. Let's say yes. Plus, I was just in a 30-day go live every day, so I have had 30 days of practice going live.
Which
So,
I think, and I'm sure, and we've spoken on the Facebook Live, is like a lot of things that you will learn from a process of doing that. Like sometimes I feel that in the beginning, just because like how we had the rough start and like disconnects and stuff like that, I feel like 30 days in, you're like, you know what, YOLO, we're just going to go ahead and just do this.
whatever.
We're going to just show
Yeah.
up. Whatever. Ex-
Uh,
Exactly.
I'm
So,
flexible.
for anyone that's new to you, I would love for you to share who are you and
Yeah,
what do you do?
I am Stacy Brookman. I'm a leadership and resilience coach, primarily for women leaders. I coach anybody, but women leaders are my sweet spot. And I help people to overcome imposter syndrome and its symptoms, which are overwork, overwhelm, people pleasing, and surprisingly, perfectionism, and just get out of that and be comfortably confident. Not the fake it till you make it kind. I don't even believe in that stuff. I believe in genuine confidence that just like exudes from the inside out, and it feels so good. It is so fun to have that type of confidence in yourself that, gosh, the world is your oyster if you have that.
And I think what's so powerful about what you're doing is that I feel like more people are starting to like lean into at least considering the conversation because I feel that at some point it was one, the elephant in the room, two,
Hmm.
almost a bit of shame to say, hey, this may be something I'm struggling with. So I'm so glad that that's what you focused on because I feel like there's a lot of leaders that have to lean into this so they can really truly build the career, build the business, build what they're really wanting to do and be an impact to the world if they learn
Yeah.
how to almost like get out their own way.
Exactly. I was talking this morning on a call, and it's like emotional mastery. And you mentioned shame, and shame is a big one, especially for women who we feel shame if we don't know, or we feel shame if we haven't done something, or if, if we're not perfect, etc. And social media does not help in,
At all.
eliminating that shame. Right. And so just being yourself, saying just being yourself is one thing, but actually that internal feeling of being comfortable with yourself is a totally different experience. And it is so amazing. It's so fun. And having mastery over your emotions, whatever emotions they are, whether they're, shame or regret or excitement or drive, whatever that is, it's all good. It's all okay. Being able to master those emotions and move into a state where you want to be is a superpower that anybody can master.
Yes, I agree. And I would love to know, in your opinion, is there ever really like this arrival? Because I've heard like the triggers don't ever go away. Like, because even in marriage or
True.
relationships, like how we react, we still have those triggers, but it's like learning how to catch us, like to stop going down that path. So, is there really
Yeah.
ever an arrival to get out of that like circle of behavior?
Yeah. Well, having that emotional mastery is a process. I don't know that there's ever
Mm-hmm.
an end because, you might go like me. I've been a coach for years and I've feel like I've mastered a lot of emotions, but then I go to the DMV for the third time and I still can't get my driver's license because it's some I lost it. Okay. I lost it. So I still have ways to go. So I don't know that anybody ever arrives, but I will tell you there was a moment, and I think this was I in Las Vegas at the time. I've moved around quite a bit, but I I sat there and I realized I was confident. I was proud of myself. I
Mm-hmm.
was confident and I could take that confidence anywhere. And I'll tell you this, I got up from my desk and I went outside of my front yard. I wanted to go out in the street and yell, I'm confident. I'm confident. So that was a
Love it.
moment when I realized that confidence is mine. It's mine to experience, mine to
Mm-hmm.
take, mine to um, not have an ego about, but be comfortable in that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, there are times when, my confidence wanes. And so, that feeling of complete confidence, that internal, that genuine confidence is so good. It is worth coming back to, worth
Mm-hmm.
working on all the time to make sure that you experience that. Um, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like nothing else that you've ever experienced until you get to that. When you get to that, it's amazing, right? It's addictive. And so
Yeah.
it is a continual work in progress. We are all works in progress, and maybe you all have visited the
Yeah.
DMV and lost it as well. But you can then
Especially
get yourself
Texas.
back,
Texas was
especially, oh
true.
my gosh, it was in Texas. So um
Yeah.
so yes, it I would say it's both. You can arrive and then you do have to work to remain there, but it's easy work, it's fun
Mm-hmm.
work, it's work worth doing on yourself that is totally amazing.
Fantastic. No, I think that it's beautiful to look at it that way, because one thing is like the awareness, because like the
Mm,
days that I want to just lay around and like, no, what are you avoiding, what's happening here, and this
yes.
actually leads right into the conversation about boundaries and like how to make them stick, and understanding, like, in my opinion, like our triggers, because a lot of it is trigger based behavior outside of trauma
Right.
based behavior. And like learning, even if it's okay to put boundaries, like what are some of the biggest challenges you find when working with someone when it comes to that big B word?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things is the misconception is that other people can run over your boundaries. Other people cannot, because here's the thing, boundaries are for us and not for other people. They are not for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I take people through a two-step boundary process, and I'd be happy to share it here. But other people can't trample your boundaries because boundaries are for you. And when you create those boundaries, you get to uphold your own boundaries for yourself because they're only for yourself. So other people can't trample them. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first one, the first step in any boundary is um, the request, and it's a request of yourself. So give me an example of where you would want a boundary. Let's just take an example. What can you imagine where you would want a
Someone,
boundary?
people that reach out after 8 o'clock.
There you go. Okay. So if people reach out after 8 o'clock, and here's the thing, you don't ever have to tell them, don't reach out after 8 o'clock, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
have to know your boundaries. This is your boundary for yourself. So the first is a request. You know, stop. self, don't take calls after 8 o'clock, right? Or don't respond after 8 o'clock. So that's the request. And then the consequence. If someone calls me after 8 o'clock, then I will not answer the phone. Okay. So can a person call you after 8 o'clock? Absolutely. That's not trampling your boundaries. When you answer the phone, you're trampling your boundaries. Does that make sense? So the boundary is for
100%.
you. I've made a request of myself and I have a consequence. When that happens, here's what I'm going to do, right? And it works in so many in relationships, if someone asks to borrow money, if a relative asks to borrow money, then I will say no. That's the 2 steps, right? If you ask to pick my brain, then I will tell you I only work with paying clients. If you call me during working hours, this would be a personal call, then I will not answer the phone. So those are the 2 boundaries, and you are the only person who can uphold the boundary and trample the
Yeah.
boundary. And I love it. And here's the thing. Here's the fundamental thing about this is that everyone in the whole world, you, me, everybody listening, the people in your life that you feel trample your boundaries, we're all autonomous human beings. We all have our own desires, wishes, actions, inactions, everything like that. And you cannot make somebody else do something or not do something. They have free will to do it. I do too, right? I have free will to call somebody outside of working hours in the hopes that they will pick up or whatever. But people are going to be people. Excuse me just a moment. Okay, there we go.
Bless you.
Thank you. So, knowing that, the boundaries then are for yourself to take your own action to protect your own interests. And that's the privilege, knowing that I may or may not influence anybody else. I can't make them do it. They're autonomous human beings. In fact, they are calling me after 8 o'clock, so therefore I can't force them to not call me. But I can control how I respond to that. And that's the 2-step boundaries. I have a resilient boundaries toolkit because I'm all about resilience. If anybody wants to get it, it's at realliferesilience.com/boundaries, and it has a ton of examples in there of how you would create these 2-step boundaries for yourself. And that is such good news because then you get to know yourself, you get to uphold those boundaries for yourself, and you get to think about these things in advance. It's much harder in the moment to say, "Ooh, I don't like people calling. I shouldn't pick up the phone, but I'm going to pick up the phone because I didn't tell them or whatever." And it's because you didn't create that boundary ahead of time. So, create your boundaries ahead of time is the best possible thing, and to think through the scenarios that made you uncomfortable or that you didn't like or something like that. Think through those and then craft your own boundaries. And then here's the thing, if that's not working for you, change it up. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to do it at 7 o'clock then, or whatever. You get to, it's your boundaries and you're upholding your own boundaries for yourself. And so you get to change them. It's fun.
And so, like, also a part of it is just understanding, like, what is a boundary that you even want to create. Because I feel that
Yes.
sometimes people have these long sufferings that one don't really understand that is a long suffering, like of like
Mm,
what's actually causing you to be irritated. Like if someone's calling, like I personally have do not disturb on my cell phone after 7 o'clock, and people are like,
yeah.
but, and I was like, no, like at 7 o'clock only a few people get through that. I'm like,
Right.
so I can't be upset like if someone calls, but I know for myself I need to start shutting down. Someone, because like you said, everyone won't know that that's a boundary that I put up, and it doesn't come back off until 8 o'clock in the morning. And people are like, but, and I'm like, no, there's, and I would love for you to elaborate for on this because I feel like sometimes even a boundary I create for myself is because one is about my mental health
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, pretty much my mental health, and then two, creating a space in which um I'm even in creating a space where I'm also joyous because I feel that when
Yes.
I don't have like those bound, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like myself shift. In reality, I can create like those boundaries in my life, and people don't need to necessarily know, but I put them there so that I can maintain my sanity as well.
And replenish yourself, right? And you have every right to do
Hmm.
that. So, a couple of things. I think one of the best ways to determine where you need boundaries is to sit down and think when throughout the day, throughout the week, whatever, or with certain people, when do I feel resentment? When do I feel used? When do I feel anger? When do I feel burnt out? Any of those situations are great places to start with thinking through what boundaries do I need to have. And then on the other hand, too, some people hesitate to put boundaries because, oh, they might expect it or they might be angry. I'll tell you what, people can get angry no matter what. I went back to
Yeah.
that autonomous human beings. You could trample your own boundaries. You could take calls till 10 o'clock at night. You're going to still get angry people. It's going to happen.
Hmm.
So protect
Yeah.
yourself and set that boundary at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whenever you want. Set that
Hmm.
boundary and then let people be people. So another concept is manuals, which I love talking about. And we all carry around these big, thick manuals of what other people should do to make us happy. If
Mm.
you will just not call before after 7, I will be happy. If you will give me a gift for my birthday, I will be happy. If my daughter calls me a couple times a week, then I'm happy. But what we do in that instance is give our emotions for other people to manipulate. Okay? So, and they all have these manuals for us. Well, if Stacy would just answer the phone, or if Stacy would just say yes to this thing that I'm requesting her to do, I'll be happy. I'll find joy. I'll be whatever. But we can't leave our emotions up to other people. Our
Yeah.
emotions are and can be in our control. So I can be happy no matter
Yeah.
what anybody else does or says, right? So instead of having this manual of like what all the other people in our lives can do to make us happy, or I'll be fine if they do X, Y, and Z, we need to drop those manuals and manage our own emotions. Emotional management and
Yeah.
in emotional mastery is one of the best superpowers you can ever have in your life, and it will, like, it brings confidence like nothing else can, I'll tell you that. So that's those are two things. First of all, find out where you feel resentment, used, anger, burnout, whatever those types of emotions are. Look at those types and say, where can I put a boundary in place for me to follow, right? It's my own boundary for me to take action on. And then also not worry about other people. They're in charge of their own emotions. If they choose to get angry if I don't answer the phone after 7, that's their choice, right? That's totally up to them.
And I would love to hear, I love that perspective. And so, since a good amount of the people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn are in the corporate world, um, which I feel like sometimes is a different vein of boundary. I mean, it's still the same word and it's still the same struggle, but it might be a different flavor of it. So I would love
Hmm.
to know, like, for anyone that's watching that is in corporate America and they're like, everyone wants all these reports and like, what if you had like a few tips you want to give to someone that is in corporate, which I think will be a little bit different than like personal life type stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of corporate, one of the things that I highly recommend is that you manage your time well and you have boundaries on your own time. So, What happens when we have like imposter syndrome, or we trample our own boundaries, or don't set boundaries, or we overwork, or we're overwhelmed, and it's because we're trying to make other people approve of us, or make other people like us, or be that. I'll tell you, when I was climbing the corporate ladder, I wanted to be that 5-star leader. I wanted all 5 stars. So I did everything. I pulled out all the stops, and I'm like, that's me. I want, but what it was that wasn't me. That was me trying to make other people look at me as I was the best leader, or a great leader, or promotable, or worthy of the job that I was in, right? And going back to everyone's autonomous, they all can still have their own opinion whether I overworked or not, right? So
Yeah.
recognizing that, that do you have those tendencies to try to do the things, overwork, or have perfectionism, like look over that report like 10 times just to make sure there's no mistakes? People are human beings. People will make mistakes no matter what. Even if you looked over it 10 times, you could still make a mistake, right? So you don't look at all the things that you do that might be trying to, I'm going to say this, manipulate other people into liking you, or having a better view of you, or approving of you, or just being that star. That is imposter syndrome speaking up, saying, I don't feel like I'm good enough, right? And so when that same thing, when you have, I had a client whose peers were dumping their stuff on her because they didn't want to do it. And she was just taking it because she's like, well, I can't say no. And it's because she didn't want to
Wow.
be the one, she didn't want to be viewed as the person that's not a
Team
partner,
player.
right, with other people, right?
Yeah.
But they were using her. And you don't realize that when you're just saying yes and saying yes. And I'm like, wait a minute, but they're not taking on any of my work. I'm doing some of theirs. They're not taking. So that's not an even exchange. And so the boundary there would be, I'm going to complete my work first. If there is extra time, I can ask my peers if there's anything I can help with, right? I'm not going to go past 5 on my time and my family's time because of someone else, right? Because I have a family. They have a family. And so when we do that, we're taking away their responsibility for themselves and their own work. And what happens is the
Yeah.
company, and I always tell you this, people, this, the company cannot love you. The company cannot love you. You can love the company, but the company cannot love you. And so the company might say, oh, no, we don't need an extra person. We've got all the work being done because Stacy's working overtime, right? Or she's doing everything, she's doing it all. Why should we hire somebody else? The work's getting done. And here you are feeling bogged down and overworked and overrun and working on Saturdays, Sundays, and going in early. At one point in my career, I woke up and I was at work by 5:30 a.m. 5:30 when work
At
started at
work?
8. At work. At work. And
Wow.
so it was me trying to get ahead and do all kinds of stuff, but
Yeah.
really I'm taking away the responsibility of the company to manage the mutual workload better, right?
Yeah.
I am actually disadvantaging myself and the entire department because nobody recognized there was a need for an extra person, or somebody else needed to pick up some
Yeah.
of that workload, right?
Work
So
up. Yeah.
recognizing that, and did I resent it? Yeah, especially I went to I was taking my daughter when she was a baby at the time to a doctor's appointment, and my boss was like, or like her third doctor's appointment in a couple of weeks, and my boss was like, "Gosh, you're taking a lot of time off." I'm like, did you see when I clocked in at 5:30 every day for the last several months, right? And really, that was my problem. That wasn't his problem.
Yeah.
That was my
Yeah.
problem. And so when
Yeah.
you can look at it like that, and just look at it from a different perspective, when you do work longer hours, I mean, there are times when you have big projects and you really need to finish, right? Or something like that. But just take a look and say, am I really doing this to make other people view me differently? Or am I really doing this, because it needs to be done? And when you really look at that, then you can set effective boundaries. I am going to work from 8 to 5 or whatever my working hours are. I'm going to work my best. I'm going to take my lunch, right? I remember the moment I started taking lunches, I felt so guilty for taking a lunch. And so it's crazy,
And I
right?
feel
In
like a lot of
corporate.
people feel that
And
way.
yeah. And so, but you deserve that lunch and you need that creative
Yeah.
rest, that brain rest and that break, right? You need that. So, just start taking a look and saying, where am I feeling resentful? Where am I feeling upset or angry? Or where am I feeling stressed and anxious? And that's what I help a lot of my clients do is like, let's identify where that anxiety is coming from. And is it an anxiety created out of necessity? Or is it an anxiety created because you're trying to affect how other people think about you? And then let's have that conversation about what you think about you and how you want to show up for yourself, right? So,
I love that. I love that. I mean, so many great tips. And I think even some moments where it makes you like reflect on, because I know even when I used to work in corporate, I was that person. Like, it took them hiring like 2 or 3 people to actually replace me when I finally left because
yes,
of the workload. And a lot of it's just because I was highly efficient too. So then it was like, now we need someone that's there to do these things. And sometimes we don't realize by even what I've been hearing is that from what you were sharing is being able to use your voice, because
yes,
like how you said about your boss, like he was completely unaware, and often we can create the tension, and you're the only one that's aware of the tension, and the other person is like going around like
right.
la la la
Totally
la, nothing's
oblivious.
going on, it's perfect. They're like, she just loves her job, that's why she's in there. Like, you
Exactly.
just never know what's going on.
Yeah. It is so true. And this works for personal lives and our personal relationships too. When we take on responsibility, especially women, as handling the kids
Yeah.
or thinking through what we're going to have for dinner all the time, or which doesn't happen in our house, but I know I've heard that happens. But
Yeah.
taking on the mental load and responsibility of running a household in addition to your job, and your spouse has a job also, that that's disallowing them to take responsibility for what they can take responsibility for as well, right? And that's where an equal partnership can bloom, when you stop taking on everything because it has to be done, and avoid the conversation around that, right? And if you're afraid of the
Yeah.
conversation, let's practice it, let's think through it, etc. There are ways you can have that conversation, but it works personally, it works professionally, and but knowing where you are and having those boundaries is one of the first things you can do.
Perfect. I love that. So I would love for you to share, like for anyone that would be interested in working with you, what's the best way to communicate to you or with you?
Yeah, well, anybody can download. It's this remarkable resilience routine. It takes you through the Resilient Boundaries Toolkit. I have a remarkable resilience routine I take people through, which is amazing also. But the Resilient Boundaries Toolkit, which is realliferesilience.com/boundaries. And I'll send you an email. You can respond back to that with the toolkit in there, and it is amazing. But then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn mostly. You can send me a direct message. I'd love to work with folks. We can have just an initial call that's free, and we can just kind of peek around the edges of what issues you might have and see how coaching might be able to help you solve them easy.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you speaking with me today. I definitely know that this conversation is needed because I see posts on all the different platforms with people complaining about you thought I was going to work, and like they're having internal arguments
Right.
with their bosses and people, and they're not aware. And this just comes down to being able to have those comfortable uncomfortable conversations for some,
Yes.
and understanding what are going to be the boundaries in which you're going to walk through and live through on a daily basis.
Yeah. Recognizing what your own emotions are and having that emotional mastery is like kind of like the foundation too. When you have that emotional mastery, nothing, you will fear nothing else. It's just totally amazing. You can work through any emotion that you have, and
Yeah.
when you're the master of your own emotions, the world is your oyster.
I love it. Well, thank you so very much, Stacy. And I hope everyone that's watched this video was able to get some type of tip or something to make you think about. Please comment below and make us like, and we'll be able to continue to answer any of those questions and continue on with this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. This